Rock Hill Police.
Yes, I was wanting to ask if a police officer could go out and check on my mom. She's not answering the phone, nor is she answering the door, so, I'm kind of concerned.
Okay, and how old is she?
She's in her 70s.
I'm seeing a way to the other side. I'm stood between lights and love lights.
Have you ever been to South Carolina, Tanya?
I haven't. This is my first time.
And by the time you leave here, you'll be talking like all of us.
Right.
I'm gonna get you saying y'all and baby and
Right.
honey and sweetie. You're gonna be going. We're in Rock Hill, South Carolina to investigate a 5-year-old murder case. Rock Hill is the northern part of the state, and it is beautiful here. Our victim in this case was 76 years old, so I brought back a member of our team, Tanya Ryder, because she has experience in dealing with cases having to do with violence against the elderly. Cora Campbell was the lady that the whole neighborhood knows, goes to her church all the time, vulnerable, sweet, defenseless.
Right.
Which is why she's a target, I guess. On December the 14th, 2012, police responded to a call to check on Cora Campbell, who had not been heard from in a few days. When they entered her home, they found Cora lying face down in a pool of her own blood, having been struck in the head with a ceramic pig and with her throat slashed. What'd you think when you saw the pictures?
Overkill, which to me just screams rage.
If you cracked her upside the head with that piggy bank, that had to have knocked her out. Why did he have to kill her?
Exactly.
And then this little bitty old lady, he slits her throat here and leaves the knife in her? That's cold.
It takes a ruthless person to do something like that.
Items collected at the crime scene, including both murder weapons, were tested for DNA, but couldn't help identify a suspect. Crimes against the elderly are especially disturbing because the victims are defenseless. These types of cases hold a special place in my heart. They just have to be solved.
Who would want to hurt a defenseless elderly woman?
I know, it's so sad. And I was thinking of my grandma, who's elderly, lives alone, vulnerable, and everybody in a little town like this knows that they're all alone.
Right.
And it just scares you. I think all of us are worried about people who we love that are older, especially women who live alone. So when something like this happens, it scares everybody. And this shouldn't happen to people like Cora Campbell. This is the kind of victim whose case you want to work.
It has been 16 years and still no answer.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
I've chosen cold cases from across the country and teamed up with the best detectives to solve them. We're more determined than ever to bring justice to these victims. Y'all sure got a fancy building.
Like our new addition.
Good morning.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Brett Holman, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Brian Thomas.
Glad you guys could make it. Come down and give us a little bit of help.
We're excited.
We are.
How many cases do you have like this one in the back of your brain percolating around this?
Not a whole lot. This is one of the cases that'll stick with me forever. Typically, our homicide rate in Rock Hill is between 5 and 8 a year. It's a very safe place. This crime was very shocking to the community. I'd like to have the satisfaction of knowing the person that's responsible for it is put in jail for the rest of their life.
Cora Campbell, what all did you find out about her lifestyle?
She pretty much was a homebody. When she did go out, it was mainly just to church.
She was well known to the neighbors as being a friendly person.
She stayed by her husband's bedside until his last day. She took care of him.
What did her husband die of?
Cancer. He had been sick for a long time.
Just 3 days before police believed Cora was murdered, she buried her husband, James. She had his funeral, everyone paid their respects, and she was just getting back to her normal life when someone viciously took it.
Friday the 14th, I heard a call go out on the radio to check on the well-being. Family had been trying to contact Miss Cora for several days. When we arrived, the locksmith opened up the back door, and you could see her laying on the floor.
Oh, you actually found her?
Yes. And then that's when we noticed the broken ceramic pig laying in several pieces around her. She also had a knife sticking out of her neck.
Her purse was there, right on the table next to her body. It didn't seem to be disturbed. Her cell phone was right next to it. It wasn't a smash and grab robbery.
When investigators searched the scene, there was no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Cora may have known her killer. Since no viable fingerprints or DNA were found, police began looking into Cora's world to try to identify potential suspects.
Y'all want to do Joey first?
Joey is Cora's biological son.
Why would we think Joey Campbell would want to kill Cora?
Joey was not happy when his mother married James. Joey had told people that James would beat him when he was a kid.
So we can say unhappy with Cora for a long time,
Yes,
right?
Correct. He had told a couple of his ex-girlfriends that he had hated his mother, that she was a slut.
She hadn't seen Joey in 3 years.
Joey claimed to have an alibi since he was living in Tennessee at the time with his ex-wife, although he attended his stepfather's funeral in South Carolina just days before the murder. It makes you wonder whether anything happened at that funeral to trigger Joey to want to kill his mother. Okay, so next up, guys, we have
Terrence Staley.
Terrence used to live across the street from Miss Cora. He had cut her grass periodically and did some minor work on the inside and helped with her husband.
Cora usually paid Terrence in cash, but on the night police believed that she was murdered, Terrence attempted to make several charges with 2 of Cora's debit cards to try and pay his and his girlfriend's rent.
He attempted to use them fraudulently, so he was charged with financial transaction card fraud and identity theft. He was found guilty of that in 2014.
Terrence pled guilty to a reduced sentence and served his time, but he's always maintained that Cora was with him that night and allowed him to make those charges. Since we don't know the exact time of Cora's death, Terrence's story is possible.
One thing that also stuck out was the fact that he made all these phone calls on the 11th. I asked him, did you ever call Cora and leave a voicemail for Cora? He said no.
When police checked Cora's phone records, there was a voicemail message from Terrence asking about the charges.
Hey, Miss Cora, this is Terrence. I was wanting to know why you had canceled the transaction knowing that I needed for my rent.
Terrence's voicemail suggests that he didn't know Cora was dead, but the timing of these events and the fact that he denied leaving the message raises questions, and it's something we need to look into.
You know, even though he did do the transactions on the debit card, which we have proof of, doesn't mean he killed her.
We've got 2 viable suspects, and they both have motive. One is emotional, the other financial. There's never been enough evidence against either to press charges. But hopefully we'll get a little lucky with witnesses, cell phone records, and bringing a fresh set of eyes to build a strong circumstantial case against whoever killed Cora. I think the hard part, Bruce, is, you've done a wonderful job on the case. It's always that hard line between a family knowing that and not understanding, well, then how come nothing's happened?
Right.
Cora was close to all 9 of her siblings who have been hoping for justice for 5 years. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
We're meeting with 4 of Cora's sisters today to help them understand better where the investigation is and hopefully where it will go from here. Tell us about Cora. What was she like?
She's always been into church work, but she loved to have fun.
She'd always crack a joke.
At all our family dinners, she always made the dressing, and that was her dish to bring.
And she was always the first one there. You told her to come at 12, she was there at 11.
Can you tell us about all those ceramic pigs?
Someone would give her a ceramic pigs, you would think that they were giving her $1 million. She loved pigs.
Why the fascination for pigs?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I remember one time my mother gave her a ceramic pig, and it was in a big box, and she was so excited, just like a little kid at Christmas.
I think about her a lot. She was just a good person. She was always doing for people, putting them before herself. She just didn't deserve this.
When y'all heard that Cora was dead, what did you think?
Well, I was shocked, for one thing.
Said I couldn't believe it.
Okay.
There's always that empty space. You know, you had a luncheon or a dinner, and she's not there. You know, you miss them.
Yeah.
You don't ever forget, but you know, you try to block it out of your mind and go on about your day-to-day activities. But there's always a void there. So it's been, you know, pretty tough for 5 years.
I know poor Bruce, he's done everything.
Yeah, he's worked hard, and we
He
appreciate it, too.
We just need a little bit of praying from you Baptist ladies, and we really think we can get there. We're hoping.
I'd like to see justice done. I mean, you know,
Certainly.
to get some closure.
When you do a job like this, you don't come across that many completely innocent victims, and you don't come across that many completely defenseless victims. This is the kind of case you do this job for, and these are the kind of family members that you want to give good answers to when you're all done.
Dr. Jenkins, this is Kelly Siegler.
How are you, sir? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Nice to meet you.
We've got 2 suspects in the brutal murder of 76-year-old Cora Campbell, her son Joey, and her neighbor Terrence Staley. We're meeting with the medical examiner who performed Cora's autopsy to see if her wounds can tell us more about how this murder happened.
After removing her clothes and cleaning her up, it was apparent that she had a laceration to the right back of her scalp. The characteristics of that wound were definitely consistent with a blunt force injury.
How much could you tell about the force applied to the piggy bank blow?
There was enough force to break the skin.
Would it knock her out or just down?
I'm sure it incapacitated her. She had stab wounds to the right side of her neck.
Okay.
The depth of those were around 2 to 2.5 inches. The fatal injuries were to her carotid artery and her jugular vein.
Okay.
The wounds would say that he was standing at her head, picked up her head, and slashed.
Oh. That makes him seem a whole lot more proficient and scary.
That's what I felt, yes.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was very helpful.
Yes, it was.
You may run for a long time, run on for a long time. Let me tell you, the God's gonna cut you down.
I'm really interested to get in there and take a look at it with my own eyes.
Now that we have a better understanding of Cora's injuries, we're going to take what we've learned and go to Cora's house to visualize and analyze the crime.
Let me tell you, just as sure as you're born, you better leave that woman alone.
This is Investigator Sullivan. He's with our crime scene unit. He was one of the initial responding investigators to start processing the scene.
Okay, so that day when y'all got here, tell us what you saw outside.
No apparent signs of forced entry or damage to any of the doors or windows. Seemed like it was a secure home.
The Meals on Wheels, there was a stack of them, probably 3 to 4 days worth.
Right here by the front door?
Yes.
Okay. Cora was last seen by a Meals on Wheels driver who delivered her dinner on December the 10th around 5:30. The next evening when he arrived, Cora didn't answer the door and her family didn't hear from her in the following days. This led police to believe that Cora was murdered on the 10th, 4 days before Cora's body was discovered.
We went through this doorway here, and immediately to our left is where we noticed Miss Campbell laying on the floor. There was several broken pieces of a ceramic pig and large pool of blood. It was dried, so it obviously had been there for a few days.
You could clearly see the handle of a knife sticking out of her neck. You could see some dry blood on the back of her head.
She was probably hit from behind, and the force from the blow made her glasses go into the bathroom.
Do we know where that pig really used to be in the house?
It was just on the other side of this wall here.
Something similar to that. I mean, that was right there as a weapon opportunity.
Since both the knife and the ceramic pig came from Cora's house, it doesn't appear that the suspect came with the intent to kill. It's possible an argument escalated and led to the attack.
You're gonna be the killer. I'll be Cora.
She's walking into the bedroom or the bathroom, and then back turn hits her.
Glasses fly.
And she's down.
The fat pig part lands here.
Yes.
And most of the debris and shards are over here.
Right.
Correct. He grabs the knife out in the kitchen, comes back to then raise her head from that position.
The puncture went in first and then the knife wound across. And that's where you're getting your large amount of blood loss. And then ends with that puncture. And that's how she was found.
She's laying there with the knife stuck right there.
It almost looks like there's 3 fingerprints on the peach-colored shirt. So that's used as leverage. And then my arm leaves this mark here. And you don't even have to step in any of the blood because she's bleeding out in that direction toward her head.
When you hear how brutally efficient the killer was to stab her and slice her throat that many times and then walk away leaving the knife still stuck in her throat, he didn't need to do that last puncture. Once he slit her throat, he could have dropped the knife and walked out the door, but he didn't. He stuck it in one last time. Just picturing how you walk up behind a little old 76-year-old lady with a pig that big and whack her upside the back of her innocent, vulnerable little head and knock her out and then still go look for a knife.
Overkill.
Somebody had a lot of anger toward Miss Cora.
The details of this scene clearly show how personal the attack was. A knife was used, which is intimate, and it occurred in a tight space toward the back of the home. It makes me think that Cora not only knew her killer, but had a close, trusting relationship with them.
This will be the only case we ever work where a ceramic pig is one of the murder weapons. Now we need to learn more about Cora's activities the night we believe she was murdered. We know our suspect, Terrence Staley, admitted to visiting Cora that night to ask her for help to pay his rent. Terrence has always claimed that Cora allowed him to use her debit cards to do that, even though he pled guilty to fraud. So we can ask Jerry Moss about Cora. Maybe he knows a little more about her finances. We need to figure out if Cora was the type of person that would have let Terrence use her debit cards. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm okay. So we're going to talk to Cora's brother and his wife. If the theory is that somebody that didn't know Cora very well is asking Cora to help them out to pay their rent, and they're going to give Cora the cash to pay for it on her debit card.
No.
And your wife is back here going, no. No way.
She would never do that for anybody.
How was Cora about helping somebody out when it came to a good amount of money?
If they needed food to eat, she'd fix them food to eat. Would she hand them money? No way. And that includes her own children. I know that there were some people who thought she was a little bit on the mean side.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you could say the same thing about Jerry.
You think people call you mean, Jerry?
Oh, I know they do.
Yes.
So he was like Cora? Cora and he were a lot alike? Okay.
So if we have a person telling us that Cora was kind enough to give him a debit card so he could pay his rent.
Honey, that ain't never gonna happen. No more than he.
You wouldn't do that, Jerry?
No, they have to pry it out of my hand or kill me one to the other.
All right.
Hey there.
Hey, it's Detective Thomas, Rock Hill Police.
We want to talk to Cora's daughter, Cynthia, to see if she has any further insight into her mother's financial habits.
Can you explain to me how your mom was with her money?
I've never known her to have a credit card. She always either wrote checks or she paid cash for everything.
If this neighbor who cut her grass asked to borrow rent money,
No.
she would probably say no to him. Okay.
That don't even sound like her. The mom I knew.
Cynthia confirms what we heard from Jerry and Pat. Cora was not the type to loan money, and she would have never allowed Terrence to use her cards. And if Terrence is lying about the cards, what else is he lying about?
Did you ever suspect anyone in particular?
I hate to say it, but, I just think that Joey was never around. The last time I seen him was at my dad's funeral. And it just seemed like it was some kind of issue going on between them two that seemed to just make my mom so angry. I asked her what was wrong, and she didn't want to tell me. So, that's just in the back of my mind, because it was only a week apart.
Cynthia knew all about the strained relationship between Joey and Cora, and thinks the argument that she witnessed between them may have reignited his anger, to the point that he killed his own mother.
I don't know what was said between those two. It just didn't seem right.
We need to learn more about our two suspects, Terrence Staley and Joey Campbell. And one of the best sources of information in any investigation are the exes, because they have the most intimate knowledge of the suspects. So we split up to track down some of Joey's exes first. How long altogether was your relationship with Joey?
About 4.5 years. Joey and I went to school together.
Okay.
And we had reconnected just a couple of weeks prior to all this going down.
We had talked about getting married, and then I found out that he's married.
About that time when his mother had passed away is when he got busted, engaged to a couple of other women.
Right. He's one of those positive people that can draw you in, but what's that saying? Beware of something, wolves in a sheep's clothing.
Sounds like he's a pretty good con, liar, manipulator.
He's a huge liar. He told me he went to Clemson.
Never been to college.
He told me he was a federal firefighter.
He works as a cashier at Family Dollar.
He was in the Navy.
He kept saying he was SEAL and all this stuff, and my God, really? Not even close.
He did say he had cows, too.
Cows?
Yeah. I guess I was a big lonesome sponge. Just fill me up with all your bullshit and I'll believe it, you know.
He would tell vivid stories, and they're consistent.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
When you meet so many women that can say what a good liar Joey was, what a con he was, how manipulative and deceitful he was, and then you hear that not just that he lied so much, but he was good at it. He could keep his lies straight. He could keep them consistent. So that kind of raises it to a new level. What are all the things you remember him saying about his mom and their relationship?
That he did not care for his mother, because, you know, the word bitch was thrown out there many times.
He would talk about her being a slut and all. He couldn't stand her. He would clench his fists and start shaking.
When he's talking about his mom?
Yep.
He'd have made it no secret that he hated his mom.
Okay.
And basically that she just didn't deserve the air that she breathes.
He just couldn't deal with the criticism. And apparently Cora was big on criticism.
When I heard how brutal she had died, you know, that's not a random break-in.
Right.
That's passionate.
Anytime you talk to exes, you have to be wary that they're not just being vindictive. But in this case, they're all painting the same picture of Joey, and it's not a good picture.
Robin remembered that specific line. He said that she didn't deserve the air she breathed.
Right.
That her throat being cut in that comment just...
Seriously.
Joey's exes had a lot of good information, so now we want to look into Terrence by talking to his ex-girlfriend at the time, Latrice Barber.
Come in with the air conditioner.
Feels a lot better here. It was around December 2012 when this happened, and he was living with Delisa at the time. There was this issue of they had to pay rent that month and they were late.
I knew about the rent issue because he asked me, and I told him I told myself I'm not paying you no money, and there's two of y'all in the house. What I look like giving you in your one-man money? That's what I also told him. I mean, he basically had nowhere to go because I'm assuming they was getting evicted that following month. And his grandma told him that he cannot come back in there at all.
Oh, her.
And I was the last option for him to go.
Okay. So he had asked to borrow money from you?
Yeah.
I got you. I know he's already been to prison for the credit card fraud. What did he ever tell you about all that?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
He wouldn't talk about it?
Nothing. A lot of times I hate to discuss it, but I do ask him, like, Terrence, what really happened? You know what I'm saying? Like, what really happened? But he wouldn't never tell me nothing.
Did he act weird about it, or?
No, he was just like, Tracy, I don't want to talk about it.
It seems pretty clear that Terrence's desperation for rent money drove him to use Cora's debit cards. But did that desperation also lead him to murder Cora?
Thank you. All righty.
Guys, our cell phone expert, who's wonderful, came back with these results. We know both of our suspects had the potential motive to kill Cora. Now we need to find out if they had the opportunity. So we've sent their cell phone records to an expert to analyze their movements the night that we believe Cora was murdered.
In reviewing the activity on Terrence's phone, all of these phone calls that were placed from his phone are within this same cell tower range.
The cell records indicate that Terrence's phone was somewhere within a 1.5-mile radius. That area includes Cora's house where she was killed and Terrence's apartment where he said he was that night. So he could have been at either location. It's disappointing that we can't pinpoint his movements more accurately to see if they contradict his story from that night.
So, having to do with Joey. On Monday, December the 10th, his phone transmits to a cell tower in Tennessee at 7:08 p.m. So he's back in Tennessee. After his stepdad's funeral, Joey said he returned home to Tennessee. And he's there on the 10th when it's believed that his mom was murdered.
He has no activity between 7:55 p.m. on the 10th to 4:44 a.m. on the 11th.
This is interesting. Joey's phone didn't make or receive any calls for nearly 9 hours during our possible murder window, which means we can't say where he was. That's enough time for Joey to have made the 4-hour drive from Tennessee to Rock Hill, killed Cora, and driven back home in time to make his next call at 4:45 a.m. Well, if Joey's the one that was so upset with his mom for all these reasons, on top of a funeral weekend where they buried the stepdad that Joey didn't like either, and he gets all the way home to Tennessee, and he's so mad and angry at his mom that he drives all the way back to Rock Hill and then all the way back to Tennessee in this unexplained activity window for his cell phone.
And is thinking straight enough to have his phone off during that time.
Joey has this mysterious window. We know he has a motive. Now it's time for us to talk to him face to face and figure out once and for all if he's Cora's killer. Okay, well, y'all have good luck with Joey.
Okay, perfect.
Y'all be safe.
See you. Good luck.
I'm hoping that when we go to see Joey, that he's able to help us know whether or not we should still be considering him as a suspect.
After examining the phone records of our two suspects, Terrence Staley and Joey Campbell, we've learned that Joey had a period of phone inactivity on the night that police believe his mother, Cora, was murdered. We've heard that Joey hated Cora, and now we can't account for his whereabouts that night. So Ryan and I have traveled to Texas to speak with him.
I think once we get into the family dynamic, it'll probably tell us a lot.
It's always tricky when you have a family member as a suspect. You need answers, but at the same time, you have to handle the interview delicately.
Hi.
Hey there.
Remembering, if Joey's innocent, he's also a victim.
When's the last time you saw your mother alive?
December 7th, 2012.
At your stepdad's funeral? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you tell us about your mom?
She didn't like my choice of wives. I drank beer. I smoked. She didn't like that.
Yeah, Southern Christian lady would.
No, no. I learned to play the flat top on those good old gospel songs.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody
Good
is
analogy.
ever good enough. Nobody knows more than she does.
You know, last few years before her death, what was y'all's relationship like then?
We were estranged.
Okay.
I didn't talk to Mom unless I had to.
Gotcha.
Mother could be an immortal being. I got so angry at Mother because she had Aunt Levine call me when I was at work to tell me James Earl had died.
Okay.
Why didn't you call me, Mother?
Yeah.
And yeah, pissed me off. Then I said, well, you bitch. You know, sometimes I could have strangled one, Mother, but how many times have you said that? Mother? But it's my mom. I love my mom, I really do.
In my experience, guilty suspects often downplay their animosity toward a victim. So Joey being this open about his anger toward Cora could be a sign of his innocence.
We were analyzing your phone records. We have almost a 9-hour window of time where your phone wasn't being used. So 8 hours and 50 minutes, can you get back to Rock Hill and kill someone and get back to Kingsport in time? Right now, that's probably my biggest problem is that 8-hour, 50 minutes window where there's no text or calls to your phone.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything you can think of that time window that would help us say no?
It's going to work. That's all I can tell you. All I can tell you.
Joey's cooperative and seems believable, but he couldn't clear up the window of when he was unaccounted for the night we believe Cora was killed. So at this point, Joey will remain suspect.
This is Kim Campbell.
Hey, Miss Campbell, how you doing?
Joey wasn't able to give us information about where he was the night of Cora's murder, but we have one more witness who might be able to do that, his ex-wife. They were married at the time and living together in Tennessee. Hopefully, she's as open as Joey's other exes were.
Did he talk to you at all about his mother's murder?
He did. He said that someone had broken into his mother's house and cut her throat.
She died on December 10th, 2012. I don't know if there's any way you could remember whether or not he was with you.
I do remember thinking at the time, I never suspected him because he was in Kingsport when he told me that his mother had been murdered.
Okay. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your help.
Well, I'm glad I could help you out.
If Kim, an ex-wife with no reason to defend Joey, says that he was in Tennessee the night of his mother's murder, that gives him a pretty strong alibi. Okay, what are all of your feelings on Joey Campbell being on our suspect board?
During this 8-hour window that he was unaccounted for, he's at home with Kimberly.
His wife.
Okay. Maybe Joey didn't make any calls that night, or maybe he simply turned off his phone because he was with his wife and he didn't want to get caught cheating.
So his phone is dead because he's hiding from all those other women and he's lying in bed with his wife and he can't answer the phone. That's a funny way to get alibied out, huh?
Plus, when we met him, he seemed authentic.
Okay. So y'all all believe him when he's talking about what happened to his mom?
Yes. Right.
Okay. So what are y'all's thoughts on where Joey stands as a suspect after all we've learned this whole week?
He is not our guy.
We should eliminate him.
I absolutely agree. It's not him.
Joey Campbell comes off the board, and now we're left with Terrence Staley.
We've got one suspect left, but if Terrence killed Cora, we're gonna need more circumstantial evidence to prove it. Nobody deserves to die the way Cora did, and nobody should get away with it.
It'll be a little quicker to go this way.
Okay. It's time we learn more about Terrence Staley. Terrence may have pled guilty to unlawful use of Cora's debit cards, but now we need to determine if he's responsible for her murder. Gary Bug Harris was Terrence's friend. We know he received a phone call from Terrence around the time of Cora's murder, and we want to know what they talked about.
Initially, what led us to you was the fact that Terrence made a phone call to you.
Yeah, he called and he was like, do you remember when we went down to a woman down the street's house? And then I was like, no, I never been to her house. And that's what I told her. I was like, I never been to her house a day in my life. He kept trying to say whatever, but it just didn't sound right. But he kept calling me, he kept asking me, do you remember? I was like, no, I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, oh, you be smoking too much weed. And I was like, what they got to do with anything? I don't know what you're talking about.
The interesting thing about Terrence's call to Gary is that it occurred between the time police believed Cora was killed and before her body was discovered. It seems like Terrence was trying to get Gary to corroborate his story before anybody even knew Cora was dead.
Like, my girl's sister called us, and she was like, the woman down the street from y'all, she got stabbed multiple times. And I was like, what? And I was wondering why all the calls was outside. I thought it was for a birthday party or something, but it wasn't. It was the stuff going on with the woman. But yeah, that's how I knew that it had happened.
Did there ever come a time after all this where you said, what the man, I don't understand what you're trying to put me in the middle of?
Off of that accident and off he called me, I was like, I just told him, I said, I don't know what you got going on, but you need to stay far away from me. I got a grandma myself, you know, and like I just went to her for Mother's Day. And it brought me to tears, just, you know what I mean, because that's not right, you know what I mean? That woman didn't do nothing to nobody. And somebody else chose her life instead of, you know what I'm saying, the man upstairs taking her life, you know, so, you know.
You're right.
Well, Gary, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
You've been very, very helpful the whole time, sir. Thank you.
Y'all have a blessed day.
Violence against the elderly is so senseless and horrible that even a suspect's friend turns their back on him. That's what happened with Gary, and when you see his emotion, that makes his statement so much more powerful.
He started crying.
He sure did.
I like him.
Oh, some cars in front of it.
Terrence's ex-girlfriend, Dalisa, was living with him at the time.
You can hop right here in the front.
And should have intimate knowledge of his attempt to use Cora's debit cards to pay the rent.
I'd like to start out with what you remember in terms of Terrence knowing Miss Cora and how all that went down with the credit cards and everything?
I remember at the time he wasn't working, so he was going through a little something as far as being stressed. We were behind on the rent, and he told me, don't worry about it, I'm gonna come up with it. I do remember that night Terrence left, and he left for a while.
Do you remember what time frame he was gone or how long he was gone?
I'm not sure, but I know it was pitch dark. Usually he tells me where he's going, when he's coming back, all of that. So I was calling and calling and calling, and he didn't answer the phone. He never not answered my phone call, or he would call me right back. Terrence never ignored me. I think he said his phone was dying or he didn't have any service.
In examining Dalisa's phone records, she tried calling Terrence several times between 8:05 and 8:40 p.m., right around the same time that Terrence was attempting to use Cora's debit cards.
When he got back, you know, he just kind of went inside the bedroom, lay down, and I was asking him what was wrong, but he kind of just brushed it off. But he was off a little bit. And I just was like, Terrence, what's wrong, you know? And if you did something wrong, you know, you need to tell me. And he just kind of said to me, you know, that's between me and God.
What was your impression of that?
If you didn't do it, you say you didn't do it. You don't say that's between me and God. What does that mean? You
so
know,
he never denied it to you? Oh, wow.
That's what made me have to go. And we went our separate ways after that.
Dalisa gave us some great insight into Terrence's behavior around the time of Cora's murder. That's a huge piece of circumstantial evidence.
We didn't have the comment about between me and God before either.
No, that's first.
Awesome.
Woo, baby.
With all that we've learned about Terrence Staley, it's time to confront him.
You Mr. Staley? Okay. You had 10 minutes. I could just go back over that stuff with you, or?
I got 10 minutes.
Terrence has always maintained that Cora allowed him to use her debit cards, but we're hoping that he'll come up with some new lies or new inconsistencies that will strengthen the case.
Can you tell us about her?
She's like the nicest woman in the world.
Tell me about December 10th, 2012, with the whole issue with the credit cards and all that.
I'm gonna just keep it simple. I went in, I stole her cards off her off her the counter.
Yeah.
And I just left her.
This is huge. Terrence just admitted to stealing Cora's debit cards. It's pretty clear he has no idea how significant that is.
But if she was as kind as you described her, why would you simply just not ask her to borrow the money instead of stealing the credit cards? Because it sounds like she would have given them to you.
We all are living in poverty, so that was going to be already a dead issue.
I get what you're saying. I'm just wondering why you didn't give it a try. You know what I mean? Especially since you would have to see her again.
Yeah, but I mean, like, back then I wasn't paying attention to, like, the things that I should have done. I had just seen the cards on the counter, and I just scooped them up and left.
Terrence admitting he stole Cora's cards gives that voicemail message the next day a whole new meaning.
Hey, Miss Cora, this is Terrence. I was wanting to know why you had canceled the transaction knowing that I need it for my rent.
By leaving that voicemail message, Terrence was basically admitting to Cora that he stole her cards and tried to use them, which wouldn't make any sense. It makes you wonder if Terrence left that message to manufacture an alibi, knowing full well Cora would have never heard the message because she was already dead.
Do you remember about that voicemail or why you left it?
She was, Dalisa was, like, she was already calling me, telling me that the transaction didn't go through. And I was kind of like just making like phone calls back to back so that whenever she would see my phone, you know what I mean, she would say that I did make an attempt to. I don't actually like remember what I said though.
So that to Dalisa, it would look like you had actually had a conversation with her.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Not all suspects are smart. Terrence Staley was so busy trying to cover up his debit card abuse that was documented, he created way more evidence against him for the murder case. The more Terrence talks, the more he digs his hole. I like it when that happens.
I know that y'all trying to figure out, you know what I mean, like, how did she die, and, you know what I mean, trying to catch who had killed her and stuff like that. And I hope y'all do find that person. But I had nothing to do with her death, though.
Right.
The only thing I had to do with is just those cards.
Yeah.
Everybody's been talked to. You've re-interviewed Terrence, and now we have a full board of evidence pointing to Terrence Staley. Why would Terrence Staley choose Cora Campbell to try and get to help him? This is a lady that is not going to give away money.
Would she hand him money? No way.
We've learned that Terrence was desperate to get his rent money.
He basically had nowhere to go because I'm assuming they was getting evicted.
Think about this window that we have that Delisa tells you, he wouldn't call me back.
He never not answered my phone call.
And when she asked him, did anything happen between you and that lady, Miss Cora, what does he say?
He just kind of said to me, you know, that's between me and God.
He used his friend Bug and tried to set him up as his alibi. And Bug's calling bullshit on him.
Like, do you remember when we went down to a woman down the street house? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And then you find out Terrence admits to you that he stole Cora's debit cards.
I stole her cards off the counter, and I just left her.
When you analyze this voicemail message, it's an admission because he thinks he's never going to get caught. These are the things y'all need to tell your solicitor. You give it to him like you're closing an argument to a jury, and you go through all these little points, and this is what you tell him.
I think the new statements from Staley are going to sink him this time.
Everything he told me in the past, those were all lies. We have enough circumstantial evidence to go forward with the case.
Well, y'all go talk to your solicitor then, guys, and good luck.
Put on my happy dance.
There you go.
The happy dance will do it.
It was a short goodbye. You laid me down.
Are you nervous about talking to Cora's sisters?
No, not at all. It's exciting to hopefully get the outcome that we're looking for.
Exactly.
Cora's family has been waiting patiently to get justice for their sister. Bruce and I are excited to update them and relieved that we don't have to tell them that their nephew Joey was involved.
Well, we've had a busy week. We had a meeting today with the solicitor's office, and we presented our case on Terrence Staley. They are going to look at the case again. They're not promising anything as far as a final outcome, but I'm encouraged.
That's good.
I'm excited.
What are you thinking?
Relieved.
Relieved?
That somebody has been walking around for 5 years thinking that they had gotten away with murder, and it's time that they pay.
I think it was wonderful. We're making some progress, and it's giving us hope. We'll always miss her, but we'll meet her again one day.
It's a long, painful process. Hopefully, though, pretty soon Bruce can tell you that finally somebody is arrested and in custody. The witnesses are great. The victim is innocent. The evidence is strong. I wish it could all happen today. You hang in there.
We are. Thanks. Appreciate all you've done.
But now Cora's family can be more at peace knowing that their sister's case was never given up on. And that's a wonderful thing. For more cold justice, go to oxygen.com.